again. She's asked questions before. She says, my last question, I promise, and it's completely NSA related, and I've been wondering about this for a long time. Can you talk more about Project Fairview and one of the NSA's largest surveillance programs in the 8 US cities, Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, LA, New York City, San Francisco, Seattle, and Washington, DC, that were on a top secret NSA map labeled as the US facilities that this project relies on? Also, thank you so much for answering my previous questions.
Actually, I put on my Twitter, tweeting. I was tweeting, so I started tweeting. By the way, I'm now in the social network. So, but I did publish the map of the Fairview, AT&T Fairview fiber optic taps, and it's not just those 8. Those are the 8 that are called peering sites. Those peering sites are where AT&T interfaces with other telecommunications companies around the world. Okay, so those are they call those peering sites. It doesn't talk about all the other sites they have across the country in all the major cities, basically, where they tap into the networks, and it's all documented on the Snowden slide that said, here is the Fairview tap points. And this was as of 2004. Okay, 30 November 2004, I believe it was. And I put that in a tweet. And I also put the AT&T microwave line, the line of sight microwave line map from the 1960s on a tweet too. And I just said, one is the overlay of the other. And somebody took that 2 tweets and put them together and did an overlay, and it said spot on, you know, so. But the idea is that they only, that article they're looking at may have only talked about those 8 points, but there's over 80 other tap points that AT&T alone has. It doesn't count the ones for Verizon or 28 other telecommunications companies who are operating the NSA tapping under the program called Blarney. And that's also, if you Google NSA space Blarney, you can read about that. Or you can read about it to Google NSA space Fairview for the AT&T, or NSA space Storm Brew for Verizon. All of that's there, and there's there's many more. There's over 100 tapping points that they're collecting all of this data, and in particular, AT&T is the largest one, and they're using things like the Neris Insight device at these different places. Collecting data, I mean, they're collecting data in Nashville, Memphis, anywhere inside the major cities inside the United States, Chicago, everywhere. And they're talking about collecting voice over IP. This is back in 2004, as well as other data, right? But they don't define all of it. Then the peering groups, they list all of the, I think there's a separate list for all the data they're collecting there, which includes not just AT&T, but all the communications companies in the world. So the peering groups give them much greater reach, but and because of cooperations internationally, but the main ones inside the United States is where all the criminal actions are occurring, and that's where they're tapping and collecting all the metadata and content. If you tweet, if you send short messages, if you do things like surf the web, wherever you go, whatever you're doing, the British at least were a little open with what they were doing in cooperation with NSA, and that was to collect. And they called it internet connection records. So it meant they wanted to know everybody's connection on the internet. Anything they did, they needed to create an internet connection record for them to analyze. And that was fed into the NSA databases and stored for them, you know, for as ever long as they can, so that they can retroactively analyze anything that anybody's done on any network in the world. And that's what's really going on. You know, people may find that hard to believe, but it's not that difficult if you really understand the capacity and capabilities of the current systems. I mean, storage is cheap, communication systems are improving in terms of speed and power and so on. So it's not really that difficult to do this. I mean, even when I designed Thin Thread, the design was such that it was mathematically impossible to find a limit to the capabilities of that system. All right, it's that simple.
Mr. Wiebe, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I would just add that the peering sites that Bill mentioned, the 8 points in the US, that's how you join the communications, the telecommunications across companies. and this happens all around the world, forming the global World Wide Web, the global internet, so that there's always a tap point that shares one company's data to another, especially where communications, phone calls are the topic, or email, or whatever else it might be.
Okay. You got that, Kenneth?